Today, we're talking with Christine Hall, who is the founder, publisher, chief editor, and FOSS writer for this very site, FOSS. You knew somebody had to be behind it. Guess what? It's Christine. And she was a journalistic person for a long time before. So, Christine, why did you start FOSS?
Well, the newspaper I was working for, I'd been writing a column for one paper for 7 years, and new ownership came into the daily that owned the weekly, and unceremoniously closed the weekly the first day they were there, locked everybody out. And I decided that I didn't really want to go shopping myself around anymore, and I'd been following FOSS for quite a while and realized I had a knack for understanding what was going on in the FOSS world. So I said, well, let's just start a website.
You were already using Linux, were you not?
Yes, I was. I started using Linux in 2002 with Mandrake 9.0.
I remember that. And FOSS, you started it when?
2010. So we've been going for, we're going on our 7th year now.
Okay, and you're actually getting, I heard you say once, advertising with actual revenue. Is this correct?
Yeah, that's down for, like, when we talked on Slashdot, we were doing a lot better than we're doing now. Readership is down a little bit right now, and advertising revenue is down.
Okay, why is your readership down, do you think, and what can you do about it?
Part of it's seasonable, because in the summer, traditionally, our readership always goes down. And then part of it is we could really benefit from more content, but that's kind of problematic because content costs money to generate, more time.
Unless, of course, you have kind-hearted souls or ones who want to just generally talk about free and open source software and would like to contribute content, hint, 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 people.
We do get some of that. Usually about once a month, every 2 months, we'll have a guest writer. But we could use more guest writers.
Yeah, so what kind of topics would a guest write about?
Well, we see ourselves as a news site, but I think there's areas outside of news that we would do well to have more of. I would personally like to see us have more how-tos, more tutorials on how to do things. We had a piece that a guest did for us quite a while ago on a usability study of GNOME that was fascinating, and our readers liked it a lot. It had a lot. It had long legs, as they say. It generated traffic to the site for several months after that.
Okay, well, I want to do this interview with you specifically because last week we talked with Bill Pollock, a book publisher.
That was a good interview. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, obvious to go from a book publisher to a website publisher. But wait, that's not all.
Yes.
What about book excerpts? Have you ever thought about publishing book excerpts as far as how-tos?
That would be no problem at all. In fact, I've thought about even contacting Bruce Byfield and see if he'd be interested in letting us excerpt some of his LibreOffice book. And
I think he has another one coming soon, doesn't he?
Does he?
I think so. I'm not sure, but I thought I heard him talk about another book.
Wouldn't surprise me.
And of course, Bill Pollock, wait, there's a publisher. And he publishes lots of free and open source books.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe there's this guy I know named Tim something. Lives up north, like Petaluma. Tim O'Reilly, he publishes a few as well.
Yeah, he's got a small little publishing company up there.
And I know some other ones. There's a little one I've written some books for called Prentice Hall.
Yeah. They're another really small publisher too.
Yeah, the world's largest, actually, division of Pearson. But all of these people do it. And I mean, I used to get all the time when I was in a position, I got begs from their PR people. Hi, would you like to publish an excerpt from one of our books?
Well, that would be an avenue. That would be something for us to think about if we had the right excerpts and stuff that would fit our readership.
Well, obviously.
Yeah.
So if you are watching this and you have written a book or are planning to write a book about free and open source software, or you have a tutorial of some sort that you want to get wider distribution, fossforce.com. Look it up. The email address is on the site. Okay, so we got that, and it's seasonal. But I remember when you had no advertising at all to mention, so it's looking up from that, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah, we're at least taking in enough right now to keep the server paid and to keep a few writers paid and working. So we don't get to pay them as much as they're worth, but we do get to at least buy them a bag of groceries every month.
Okay, although we can debate about what a writer is worth between whether it's a dime a week or a quarter, right?
Might even go up to $1.
Okay, so what are your favorite, news. You say how-tos. You like those. What would be your dream article?
I don't know if there is such thing as a dream article, and maybe I wouldn't know it until I saw it. A dream book. One of my favorite books of all time was Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, Hunter S. Thompson. And
fine, yes.
I would never have wished for that book because it was so unique and so unusual. And if I wished for another Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, that'd be very disappointing because it'd probably be boring.
So what you want might be called Attack of the Giant Lizards at LinuxCon.
What I want, I think that FOSS in a lot of ways is really more about the quality of the writing a lot of times than anything else. What I really like is a good, compelling read.
Okay.
And that's first and foremost always.
Which you can recognize because between the radio and everything else, you spent, before sort of retiring, how long did you spend in the news business?
Well, I grew up in radio, so and I stayed in radio until the early 90s. So that would be all my life. Started writing professionally in 1972 when I sold my first story to the Los Angeles Free Press.
Christine, do you see FOSS as being like, the online equivalent of an alternative newspaper for Linux and open source?
Yes and no. There's some of that just because of who I am and who Ken Starks is, who you are. So we all come out of that sort of background, but I think we pull our punches more, and except for the LA Free Press, I think we try to use journalistic standards more than you might have seen with the Underground Press. But the Underground Press started off with the idea that we're right, we know what it should be, and supported a lot of loopy causes and so forth. Now we do write for our audience. We speak directly at, and we ask. I always say sometimes, and when we're begging for money, that when we interview people, when we talk to people, we ask the questions that you would want to ask. So from that sense, yes. From another sense, I would say we're a hybrid. That was then, this is now. We certainly use a lot of what used to be called the new journalism. Where people can sometimes it's okay if the writer becomes part of the story.
Okay.
You know, because that explains how you're interpreting the story sometimes. And it explains the spin that's on the story. There's no such thing as objective journalism. You know, that doesn't exist. The New York Times can claim to be objective all they want, but they tell stories. They report the news from the viewpoint of establishment U.S.
Upscale establishment.
Upscale establishment U.S. Yeah.
Yes.
Which
New York Times
you really see this whenever you live outside the United States, when you see how the mainstream media covers news just as objectively as American, but you wouldn't recognize it because suddenly it's not a U.S. centric sort of thing.
Well, would you believe I have this thing now in my very own home called the World Wide Web, and I can read news media from all over the world.
Amazing, isn't it? And that's an eye-opener, too. I especially like reading the English-speaking press from India sometimes. I love the ads. If I'm at an Indian newspaper site, I definitely don't want to have AdBlock Plus turned on or anything like that. I want to see the ads.
Which let me give a video interview plug here. Before long, we're going to be talking with Aolita Sharma, who is a big timer in free software in India and has been a member of the OSI, the Open Source Initiative Board, and is from India. And we're going to be talking with her about the internationalization of open source, about which she is a legitimate expert.
Mm-hmm. And see, that's something else that we played with this for a while with FOSS, and I would really like to have more of this. When Larry Cafiero was with us, we started a feature that we never could quite get off the ground because we had trouble finding the content, but it was FOSS around the world.
Okay.
Where we ran a story that was written by a guy in Panama about how free and open source software and the groups and things that were happening there. Larry did a story that was centered on South America. We've had a couple of stories about some open source software projects in India.
Okay.
And that's something because I'm all for. Especially, our readership is almost exclusively in the United States. We have some in all the English-speaking countries, and we have some in India. And I think Americans tend to not be very aware of what's happening outside their country because we're so large, and it's just so easy to get lost in America. And I think it's good for them to see some of what motivates and what moves and some of the cultural stuff. Like one of the stories we ran from India was a group of guys that have been keeping what is the third most spoken language in India, that culture alive by developing open source fonts so that the language could be displayed online.
Okay, well, that reminds me of Ace Suarez, who I need to interview like this sometime if I can catch him in a mood when he's not being camera shy. Ace lives on the island of Curacao, like the liquor in the Caribbean.
Uh-huh.
And the local language is Papiamento. It formerly was a Dutch possession, so Dutch is big. English is not so big. Spanish is big because it's right near Venezuela, right on the coast. And lately, God help them, they're getting overrun because you can get to Curacao from Venezuela in a rowboat, and people have been, for obvious reasons, fleeing Venezuela. Mm-hmm. But Papiamento, they could not get Microsoft to do Word. So Ace and a bunch of other guys said, well, the hell with it. We'll make OpenOffice in Papiamento. And they did. It's open source. They could do that. And then, of course, LibreOffice. And he's like the voice of Linux in the Dutch, or whatever they call it now, the Dutch West, the Netherlands Antilles. He's like the Linux guy, and he owns an ISP and consulting company, and his wife is a web designer. So it works out really well. Let me ask you this. We're here. Where do you want to go with FOSS? Where do you want to go from here, other than better writing and more of it?
Better writing, more of it. I would like to see. I know that there's a bigger audience out there for news on FOSS than we're grabbing. And I would really, really, really like to have that. And editorially, I would like for us to be more of a news site, and for us to actually, for us to be on top of the story. And so we are on top of the story sometimes. A lot of times I'm very pleased. We're there first for the story. And one thing that we never do is we don't report a story unless we can add something to it. Now, sometimes adding something to it might be we're the first that puts all the information together in one place. Sometimes what we add to it is a new perspective. But the one thing that we never do is just go to other news sites and rewrite what they've done.